So what I'm going to share with you is some of our insights really based upon a decade of doing real-time marketing and campaign analysis. And I'm going to talk about these 6 topics here. And we'll share some two types of ROI measurement. And I'm going to give you a quick view of a case study and how we've gone about doing in-campaign optimization, so you can see that in action. And then I'll share with you really why social media has been a catalyst for real-time, and some ideas about getting your organization ready. We'll touch on what we see as being better than real-time course correction and give you some concluding thoughts. Now, today I'm really speaking to a couple different audiences. We have a number of our clients, past and current, on the line, which is great, and we also have some folks that we haven't had the opportunity to work with before. So I'm going to try to really bridge this area between people who are familiar with our systems and how we work and are looking to gain more insights about how to take better advantage of real-time marketing insights, as well as talking to some of the folks that maybe are just thinking about real-time perhaps for the first time without having the benefit of working through our system before. So to give you a little bit of background, we've been doing in-campaign measurement for more than a decade now, and so a lot of our insights come from that perspective. And I'll just share with you, one of the most visible campaigns we did was almost a decade ago that had this real-time dimension to it. And that was a Ford F-150 launch. Bill Ford, the chairman of Ford, said it was the most important launch for their company in more than 100 years. And so there was a lot of pressure around that campaign. And they were spending over $100 million in the first 90 days of the campaign. And so it started off with the football kickoff weekend, and they wanted to be able to see how the campaign was doing within 1 week of that campaign starting, and then again at a 2-week point and a 1-month point and a 3-month point. And each of those were decision points of where they could change their media mix, message rotation, and other campaign execution details. And so that really was probably one of the first major campaigns that you can read the impact of real-time marketing. Ultimately, that campaign became a part of a cover story in Business Week, and there they cited that the impact of that campaign and the ability to make those adjustments was worth over $635 million in incremental revenue for them. So really huge, huge demonstration of the power of real-time campaign insights. Up to that date, many marketers had done a little bit of creative measurement and quick adjustments and so forth, but nothing on the scale of what Ford had done. After that point, we began to do more and more of that work in software, and by 2013, we went to our next version of software, which we call the ROI Brain, and it really put all of our clients on that platform. So really, our effort will be, what I'll be sharing with you will be what we've learned over the past 10 years about making real-time a more powerful part of the marketing puzzle. Now, some of you may be confronted by some of your colleagues who ask why care about real-time. For the most part, marketers have built their plans and launched them without adjusting them in campaign all that much, and so why care much about that? If you get those questions, here are 4 quick answers you can give them. Clearly, participating in the social conversation requires some real-time capabilities. Secondly, the competitive pressure and competitive advantage you can get from real-time can be pretty fundamental. One of the great case studies we were happy to share with you was how Philips was able to beat Procter & Gamble, clearly one of the world's best marketers, but P&G waits for about 6 months before they get a read on how their campaigns did when they do their semi-annual marketing mix modeling, and Philips was able to see the results of the campaign within a couple of days, and they were able to adjust their media mix and their messages by market based on what P&G was doing and which of their messages. They grew their market share by 5%, really at P&G's cost, and the controller independently calculated that the changes that they made in market were worth $27 million in incremental profit. Even if you don't have a brutal competitor that you're up against, the ability to fine-tune your execution and squeeze out additional incremental ROI and profit is a good reason. And fourth and finally, there's always the unknown, the world events that happen, the tsunami in Japan, which affected inventory in the automotive industry, and the ability to then play through how you would optimize across your portfolio now, given that change, or the economic train wreck that we saw quite prominent in 2008. We were able to help a number of clients make adjustments to grab share during that period of time, because we could see how the consumer is changing in the response to their messages, and therefore what to dial up. Now I want to make the point that what's more important in real time is really leading indicators. That is, indicators that are predictive of what's going to happen, and they're diagnostic that tell you why that's happening, and prescriptive to tell you what to do about it. That's going to be a core theme in today's webinar. And I also want to make the point about being organizational ready and getting the buy-in. One of the clients that we just began to work with when the economy was GM. And when we came in for our first report to GM and said, hey, we're predicting that the whole category is going to be down, but here's what you can do to take action to grab share in the midst of that, of this downturn. They stopped listening to us when we said the whole category is going to be down. And literally one of them said, Toyota never declines, this can't be right. And they didn't really apply our recommendations, and we didn't continue working with them. And that was a shame, because as we look back at with the benefit of hindsight, clearly we were right. You can see in the chart that we all know the market kept falling, and we do know that the auto category did in fact collapse, and we do know that in fact Toyota did also decline, and we also are very confident that the recommendations we were making, were worth over $1 billion in incremental upside for them had they taken advantage of those insights. But it makes the point that if you don't have the buy-in and you're making a prediction about something, there needs to be a level of trust and confidence that's built in the organization around the research and around the approaches for marketers to take action on them. Let me go ahead and try to do the first poll here and see if that can be seen by folks. And if so, we'll get the screens back. Forget how we can get them back online. Okay, so go ahead and I see folks are voting now on the question. Give a couple more seconds here. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the first poll here, and we'll see if we can get you guys up the presentation to be able to view. The question was really about it's no longer enough to plan. I'll go ahead and close the poll now. It's no longer enough to plan a campaign months in advance. Marketers have to be able to adjust in real time, and we have basically 96% of people agreeing with that statement or strongly agreeing with that statement. So it'd be interesting to follow up with the person or two that might have disagreed with that statement, but clearly we're seeing that era of planning your campaigns months in advance and doing what was called the spray and pray approach. Spray your messages out there and pray that it works isn't sustainable. So let's go ahead and look at the next poll here. Real time is more than getting a tweet out based upon current events. Okay, great. We'll give a few more seconds here for votes. And here, this one is really 100% agreement, 60% strongly agreeing with that statement. It's interesting because when one of my colleagues was just at the ANA conference on real time, almost all of it revolved around social media. And I'm really thrilled to hear the response to this poll here, because our view, having looked at this over the past decade, is that real-time is a lot more than just being able to get a tweet out or engage in the social media conversation. That's clearly a catalyst for making change, but it isn't the main, or certainly the only driver for what real-time is about. And so I'm going to talk about what some of the other real-time dimensions are about as we go through today. Okay, perfect. Well, I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the main concepts, because I think a lot of them don't necessarily require pictures. And then I'm going to start with the first topic, which is really about this two different meanings in real time. The first view of real time is what we call rear view mirror real time. And the second one is as it happens real time. And I want to make a very important distinction here and take you through a few ideas around this distinction. The rear view mirror real time is really about taking a historical mix model, which looks at data from the last 3 years or more, and figures out how different variables affect that trend. And then the real-time aspect of it is that there, is plugging in current variable today, but all of the analysis is really based upon the patterns that we've seen in the past year. And when you talk to a marketing researcher, most of the time when they talk about real-time, they mean this rear view mirror type of real time, using the past to understand and make a prediction about what's likely to be happening right now. The distinction I want to make is between that second category, which is as it happens real time, which is really about measuring the message impact by target audience, by media today, and this is what most marketers expect when they talk about real time, because they really want to get feedback on how their campaign and how their messaging. No, maybe it's, it could pick up on gas prices or weather or other issues. So the main limitation is that this model is very helpful. It can give you some good warning information, but it's not answering how this campaign message is working right now. Okay, so looking at slide 8, this is an example of one of the models that we've built in the automotive industry that's a rear-view mirror model. And it's looking, and you can see all these factors across Honda's business or the automotive industry that impact success, competitive pricing, incentives, ad spend, the category size, unemployment rate, finance rates, gas prices, and so forth. I've highlighted gas prices here, and we can show that if with this model we saw that gas prices spiked to $4.15, we could then predict in real time that the demand for the SUVs and trucks would be down, and the demand for the fuel-efficient, so compact-type cars would be up. It's actually not looking at the reaction is to gas prices right now, this instant. It's actually looking at the pattern of reaction to gas prices over the past few years and assuming that that's going to be the same right now, today. I'll give you another example, jumping to slide 9. And we'll go ahead and just build out the slides here so you can see all that. This is a model, and we have one of the colleagues who worked on this on the client side on this call as well. And what we did together was, they wanted to look at and see if we could help them understand what's the optimal media mix. And to do that, we built a model to predict ratings, and we used what we call situational factors, like the season program was running in, time slot, lead-in, think of those as distribution effects, as well as competitive dimensions, and then, of course, all the things that you'd be doing on the media side and the strength of your creative, reach and frequency, pre-testing scores, and so forth could go in there. And with that, we could predict the ratings that would be achieved and how much of those ratings would be due to marketing. We could also find what the optimal point of how much money to spend on advertising, what the optimal medium. Now, one of the things that you could do with that is you could also change a variable and say, wow, when we built this plan, we didn't think the competition was going to be all that tough for this time slot, but now it is, so let's change that factor and see what type of impact that's going to have on our business. Now, again, it's not really measuring what is the competitive impact right now, this moment. It's saying, well, here's what the pattern of competitive impact has been historically in a rearview mirror, and therefore that's our best guess of what's going to be happening right now. If we jump to the next slide, slide 10, we can see that these models can actually be decently accurate. This was some validation work we did, and on average it was accurate plus or minus 8.5% on average. So jumping to slide 11, models are good for planning. They're great for planning, really. And you can do what ifs and do competitive war games and see what would happen if this happened. It's great for also thinking about increasing or decreasing a budget in campaign. If you see that there's a broad, stronger competitive activity, maybe you can then say, well, what would happen if we increased our marketing budget? Would that get some of those reactions back? Now, what it's not actionable for, this idea of, again, rear view, mirror, real time, is it's not actionable for creative rotation or message targeting or really truly shifting your media mix based upon what's happening right now. It's not really designed for social media dialogue because you're not really engaging and seeing how that social media is affecting your customers right now. And it's not really set up for one-to-one marketing. It's really not attuned to seeing how individuals are reacting to messages, because most of those models are built upon aggregate data sets and time series. And it's not really what, and probably the most important point for this last point, it's not really what most marketers expect when we talk about real-time feedback of their campaign. What they expect is, well, if that, how is my messaging working against my target audience, and how are the different conditions affecting my marketing campaign is trying to achieve right now, this moment. And so for that reason, and going all the way back to the 4.450 in previous campaign, our approach has been to say, we'll certainly do and build these impact-based planning tools, and we have software called impact-based planning. As clients, you're familiar with that. That's where we're building out these curves. But we, jumping to slide 12, really have focused on making sure that we have as it happens real time. which is about measuring the message impact by target audience. So jumping to slide 13, this is really about what we see as the next generation of real-time, which includes historical modeling that we just saw the rearview mirror, but it also answers how this creative is working among each target audience within each media, and it's looking for synergies within the mix and patterns about what's happening this moment. So if you jump down to the build, our clients on the line are very familiar with this type of a slide, and this is our spend impact response function. And what you see in the dark line is what we would predict to happen based upon all the historical data. So we would say if you're going to spend this amount in marketing, we would predict a 9% lift on this key metric. But when you combine it with the as it happens analysis, you can say, well, this particular campaign right now, the dot that's below that line, it's only getting a 5% impact on creative. And so we can basically go through and we can say, we can look at the diagnostic questions about, well, why isn't it working as well as other campaigns historically have worked? And we can look at prescriptive questions like, what could we change to try to get our results to be improved? So for those of you that are researchers on the line, and I know there are several, I'll just jump to slide 14 and just say, how are we able to look at as it happens analysis and get to the prescriptive ones, and why is that different from the rearview mirror type analysis? And it really comes down to the structure of the data. When Forrester did their review of the leaders in marketing mix modeling, they call out marketing evolution as being uniquely customer-centric. And part of that is this data structure you're seeing on the right side, which is we're able to look at individual customers and their response to different messages. We're able to look at both attitudinal and behavioral data. And we're able to look at that at a very fine-tuned point. So we generate about 20 times more data than a traditional mixed model that does the time series work. And so because of that, we can say, well, how is this campaign or these combination of ads this person's seeing working differently than a different combination of ads to another group of people? In the rearview mirror, we're really aggregating that data. We're losing that granularity and that detail. And so if you're interested in diving deeper into the data part and understanding why, reach out to us and we'll follow up, talk a lot more about the ramifications of the different data structure. But I did just want to give a nod to the underlying data structure as part of the conversation. So as to bring us back to what does this all mean in slide 15, what it means is that you can think about that dark gray line that uses a historical pattern as what's sometimes called in literature an empirical generalization. Now, that's a fancy way of saying that we are looking at past data and saying, well, on average, this is how it works. What's different about the thing that we're doing, the customer-centric one, is we're actually not making any empirical generalization. We're saying specifically, how is this campaign working against these consumers right now? And the real power of that, acting before you get to the point of sales, and you're really trying to create leading indicators like does purchase intent or top pick or brand affinity, do those things begin to help us predict whether that person will buy or not buy? So a lot of our models are built around this idea of this path to purchase and trying to see if we can get further ahead of real time so we aren't, like if you go back to the holiday example with Philips competing against Procter & Gamble, they couldn't wait until the sales materialized to make a decision to change their creative rotation. They wanted to take advantage of leading indicators like purchase consideration or gift-giving consideration. And those became the leading indicators that allowed them to make the decision that they needed to rotate their creative or how to optimize their media mix. So jumping to slide 16, I'll show you an image of this purchase highway, and we'll come back to the key point, which is watching your sales materialize in real time. That's okay, but what's better than that real time is having a leading indicator to say whether or not your sales are going to materialize this next month or this next week. And to do that, that's really where we begin to say, well, what is that path to purchase and what's predictive? What elements can we pull off that are predictive? And ideally diagnostic that tell us if what's working right and what's not working so well. And then prescriptive that tells us what to change. So if we saw a pattern like this where we saw, well, awareness was really high, that was increasing, but it wasn't translating into favorability or consideration or initial sales, initial trial of the product, that would help us then diagnose and say, well, clearly the message isn't resonating with the people in the right way. We're probably not hitting the right motivation. This is a good example of what we had found. We write a lot in the book What Sticks about the insights about how motivations and message account for either over half of the cases where advertising doesn't produce the results that the marketer would want. Usually comes back to that point. And this is the type of pattern we oftentimes see in the predictive leading indicator. So let me take you through a real-world case example here and show you how we go about developing those leading indicators and how those get used in, day-out operations and marketing. This is an example of the dashboard looking at an entertainment client, and the alert that the dashboard would send out would be that the campaign is predicted to miss the goal, that the leading indicator should be optimized. And it gives a specific recommendation for what to do to optimize it. And this is drawn from a real example where what we saw in entertainment was that the program knowledge was up. People were, they knew what the ad was about. Network recall was up okay, so they knew what network it was on, but they didn't want to watch it. That was flat, and when they looked at the time slot, it was not their top pick. And so this was saying, you're not going to hit your ratings. In fact, we predicted they'd miss their ratings by somewhere between 25 and 35%. So that if I drill down on that area in slide 19, I can then look at the current forecast and say, okay, well, if we make some course corrections here, we can go from the campaign that's trending to where it's going to miss the goals by 25 to 35% to where it can get back on track. And the prescriptive part, we can look over down below that curve chart, and you can see, and this is small font, I apologize, but you can see that we could generate about a 40% improvement in this campaign by changing the creative allocation, the targeting strategy, and the media mix. Over to the right, you can see specifically, which messages were working better than others, and among which target audience they were working best among. So you can see Ad A is clearly the strong performer overall, but you can also see that Ad A is in particular working best among females. That's what's driving the effect, and some ads are not working very well against females, and Ad B is an example. And if I click one more slide here on reallocation here, we can then see that the current allocation is where Ad C is almost half of the impressions, and the rest is split between Ad A and B. But if we optimize it, Ad A would actually be over 55%, and Ad B would be about 17%, and Ad C 27%. The algorithm that we're going through and measuring how the campaign's working is actually going through and figuring out for every line item of over 1,000 different details of national and local television, digital, and radio, etc., and saying which creative should you be running in which media properties, and how should you be changing your media mix to achieve that 40% improvement in business results. So one of the suggestions that comes out of here, if we hit the build on slide 20, is to hold 25% of your budget flexible until after you get your first in-campaign readout, because if you've already committed all your budget dollars to those line items of media, you still can change your creative rotation and create a fairly big impact. You can see creative allocation is half the total improvement in that 40% if you look to the bottom left of the slide. But if you also leave some flexibility in spending, you can allocate more dollars to the areas, to the target audiences and line item media details and media mix that will also help you optimize the effect, and that's worth about half the impact improvement as well. So some of our clients are doing that today. They're holding back 25%, and this is a good opportunity to launch another poll question here, which is, I'll put up here, how many of you would say that you only commit 75% less of your budget and that you hold the rest to be committed in real time based upon campaign performance? Okay, give a few more seconds here for the poll. Okay, now I do know that this is a mixture of people who are Marketing Evolution clients, and so it's good to see about 20% of the folks are in fact doing that today. And let me see, the other results that we saw were that most other people aren't doing that or don't know for sure. So That's probably, I think that the trend is going to be increasingly towards more and more clients and companies holding budget flexible because it's just such a big advantage. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide here. We'll talk a bit about what happened in this particular client experience. So just a quick description of the secret sauce of what's going on here, and then dive into the conclusion of this case study. What's going on here to be able to do the analysis that you just saw was that we had customer centric modeling as the campaign is happening to measure the impact of the creative among different target audiences and different media. We had leading indicators so that we didn't have to wait for ratings to show up, sales to show up to say, hey, you should make some changes. And we had an advanced algorithm that was linked into MRI, Nielsen, Facebook, and other online major trading desks so that we could execute very quickly the insights that we developed. We had used the same software for pre-campaign planning, so we knew where everything was being spent and where things could be changed and adjusted, where there was flexibility and where there wasn't. And then we use that mid-course correction to take a campaign. You can either take it to mid-course correct if you're going to miss the target, or you can take a campaign that's actually working great and fine. You can still oftentimes find that you can squeeze out even more sales and profit. You can take a campaign from good to great. Jumping to the next slide here, what you saw then can come from changing your creative allocation. Here's how to change it. If we look at the bottom left, here's how much from changing the targeting strategy, and here's how much from changing your media. So jumping to the next slide, in essence, we then are matching, and this is where the one-to-one aspect of real-time, to me, gets really exciting, is because we're actually matching at a fairly detailed level, much closer towards one-to-one, which message goes to which people in which media to generate the most impact. So what happened? Let's look at slide 24, the next slide here. And the client said to us, we've been working with them for about a year at this point. They said, we think you are right, but we had also recommended that this strategy, that this message should be more skewed towards females. But the politics are such that they want to go after men. We're actually better off letting this play out and seeing if, in fact, we missed week one goals, and we think your prediction's right, and we will. And then we'll be able to say, look, we gave you a heads up that we thought we were going to miss, and we should be going after females because they seem to be responding better. Now we're going to go ahead and activate that change of strategy because we've in fact missed our goals. So if we hit the build, you can see that the early episode readings were in fact within the range that we had estimated. They were off by 32% in the first week, and they began to make the changes right before the second week. That was off by 25%. And by the third week, we were back on track. And that was really driven by the ability to get the right message to the right people in the right environment and taking advantage of that in-campaign insights. And they really stayed on track through the end of the campaign flight. You can see them down just a little bit as they began to pull back media weight in the final week of the campaign, which is, again, what we would have predicted would happen. So the power of those leading indicators to see what's likely to happen in the marketplace and to make the adjustments to deliver the right message to the right person in the right environment can be pretty powerful. So I'm going to go from the case study now, and in the next slide we'll just talk about social media as a catalyst for real time, and then I'll talk about some of what systems need to be in place to be ready to execute real time. So jumping this 2 more slides down, real time is more than social media. I think you guys all agreed with that statement. The thing, though, about social media is it's a great catalyst to look at your own internal approval process. So if you saw something happen, use this as a thought exercise. If you saw something happen in social media right now that was very big and important to your brand, and you wanted to respond with a campaign, how long would that take you to do? And this, again, just checking, how many approvals would you need to get? And is that approval a manual process? Are you doing that by email, or is it the streamlined electronic web-based system where you can track the workflow and the approvals? In order to work in real time, the approval and streamlining that process is very important. So speaking more specifically about social media, though, beyond just the benefit of improving your approvals process, we've certainly seen that social media can and should feed marketing action. Every company should be asking, what can we predict from social media? And you can start off with a rear-view mirror approach and say, hey, if we look at the last year or two of social media, what were the big things that happened, and can we see when those things happened, did something happen in our business that followed? And therefore, is there a predictive value out of some of these social metrics? For some of your businesses, you won't find that it's that significant. But for a few businesses, you might find that there's some predictive power and value in what's going on in social media. We do see different things play out for different categories. In entertainment, for example, there's much more predictive value in social media than some other business. Now, if you do find those patterns, then the next thing to do is to look at, well, how do we begin to pull out those key engagement metrics or things that are happening in social media that we should be tracking as it happens and responding as it happens. And so that's really the next part of the formula. And what I'm going to show you is that, in fact, we've been able to, for several clients, predict value from social media and also build models to say, well, here's how much you should be spending in social media and here's how you should be engaging. And if you see different, these trigger points would then say that you unleash additional spending in social media in this way. And if you don't cross these thresholds, save your money because it's not going to create as much value. We've also been able to see certain insights like, wow, this target audience is really into you guys in social media. Here's how they're responding. And because we have that customer-centric data set, we can cross-tab that against what they're watching in TV, what magazines they're reading, what radio stations they're listening to, and we can help you fine-tune your targeting in other media based upon what we're learning in social media. So let's take a look at that. So this is just, next slide is a partial list of all the metrics that we pull in social media. In Facebook alone, from a single one of your corporate pages, we'll pull 180 different metrics. So but these are the big ones that we're looking at across different social media. And what we do is we look at how we can build up what the spend impact response function is from each of these, and we plug that into that cross-media framework to build budgets. So looking at the next slide, 28, you'll see that we can build these spend impact response curves and see where social media fits in compared to television and magazine and other media. And then we can further break those out into different elements of social media like Facebook versus Twitter versus YouTube. And jumping to slide 29, we can then see that we can there a plan of how much you should be spending in social media and what that breakdown looks like. And from that, we can predict what type of impact you should get. And again, this is where we're talking about the rear view mirror look based upon having built the data based on what typically has happened, which is then to say, okay, now let's monitor to see how your social media is playing out. Are you hitting the main goals? And if not, what should you be changing to get back on track? In the next slide, I'll just share with you one of the really exciting pieces that we've been working on very recently is the cross-media implications of social media. The ability to see a certain target audience responding to your message and sharing and getting really engaged, and then saying, take that group of people and say, what are they watching on TV? Where else can we reach them? And to be able to take that insight from social media and say, well, how do we target them in other places in digital? How do we bring that message to them in other places in television and radio and so forth? This example slide here is one that we did last year, which was really first being able to make the leap from here's what you ran in TV, here's what was working in certain networks, so what other networks should you buy to extend your message? And again, we've just taken that same philosophy and just made that cross-media in the last few months. This is, by the way, also pretty an important point just to make about real-time, which is this is another good reason why you hold back 25% or more of your budget, because if you can buy additional media in the places where the audiences are most likely to respond, you can oftentimes take a good campaign and get another 10 to 15% of improved productivity and profitability out of in the form of increased marketing ROI. Okay, so I want to leave some time for questions. So I'm going to go through these next few slides in the next really 10 minutes, and I'll give us 5 minutes for Q&A, and we can follow up if other questions offline if I don't get to all the questions. But I want to make the point about whether or not the organization's system ready. So looking at slide 31, I started off by talking about really getting the real-time foundation in place, and I want to talk about systems, buy-in, and training. And so the systems I'm going to spend a little bit more time on. Those are things like a marketing calendar, web-based marketing calendar, digital asset management, ad tracking codes using ANA Ad ID. Companies like Tagman for digital codes are a good place to go as well. Using things like Nielsen's keeping track to monitor the TV impressions that are being delivered and feed that back much more quickly. Competitive feeds might be part of your system. External feeds for like weather and gas prices, etc. We've actually at Marketing Evolution amassed a list of all these different data feeds. First of all, we brought the system together for clients just to make that easier. And we have that pre-packaged with our analysis. And I'll show a few examples of what that looks like. And we've also created APIs to a lot of different data feeds, and we've organized subscription services to a lot of these different services so that it's an easy one-stop shop to say, let's go real-time really quickly. Because what we found was a lot of companies didn't have these infrastructures in place and didn't really know where to turn to next to get the system in place that they needed for streamlining their approval process or getting web-based marketing calendars and so forth together. So to demonstrate how that works, when we use our impact-based planning software to build a plan, and again, Marketing Evolution clients will be very familiar with this interface on slide 32, you can see that the predicted impact curve there in the middle of the screen, and then a very detailed line item of every single thing that you'd buy, and you can see the pie chart there where you've got the red dot digital, and then you've got all the individual digital lines in the next pie chart. You've got very line item by line item detail of exactly what the media plan should be. The agency can change that, tweak that, add new things into it. And then in slide 33, you hit a button when you finalize it, and it populates a marketing calendar. We've worked with a third party and just completely bundled and created a great infrastructure for this marketing calendar. This is BrandMaker, which is configured it to work very specifically with our software. And you can track all of your marketing campaigns all the way down to the detail, and it automatically populates all the budget information. And jumping to the next slide, slide 34, what that means is that not only do you have this marketing calendar to very fine levels of detail, you have the dollars that are budgeted, and then as those get spent and committed, we can track those, and as they become actualized, we can track those. And we tie all that data also into online ad exchanges, and Facebook, and other things, so we can really streamline this process so that if you need to make a mid-course correction, the system's all connected with all the same coding systems to be able to make that change very, very quickly. In some cases, in an automated way. So the power of the system, this is just one illustration of the power of the system, but really there's a whole other conversation if you're interested in talking more about the system, about the power of digital asset management and being able to keep all of your ads coded and design them for really this one-to-one future. And we think that the partner we've picked and integrated into our software is really well equipped to go down that journey towards from not only real time, but also that journey towards more one-to-one marketing messaging. So the next point I'll make on slide 35 is about buy-in. What we found over the last decade that is most critical to take advantage of real-time insights and turn those into real-time incremental profits is a clear definition of success and the ability to set the alerts so that the system can let you know when the problem is likely to occur so you can get ahead of it. That isn't just looking at a long PowerPoint deck. That's actually saying this is what success is. Here are the control bands under which if we're below this threshold, we're going to trigger an alert to take action. And then the scenario planning is deciding who's going to take what action when. After we worked with Ford, the next automotive plant we worked with, we had that same conversation about scenario planning, and one of the people in the room literally jumped up and ran out of the room and said, hey, pardon me, I know we're just wrapping up our TV creative. I want to make sure that I have a version that has a 5-second spot free so I can drop in a different lease offer if we're missing our goals, because that's the change we'd make to get back on track. And so that way of thinking about the system in advance and having your assets and your materials ready to go in advance for those different potential outcomes is a huge competitive advantage. And so if you think about, we're delivering a dashboard, the decision-making in your organization is attaching a steering wheel to it so you can actually turn if you don't like the direction you're going. The third recommendation really comes out of our experience with GM that I had shared, which is I think that if they had been committed to more than just one project and for a year, they would have seen that our prediction, in fact, came true. The next time, the second campaign we measured, they would have been more likely to take some of the actions. And when they saw those actions actually improving their business and that they were growing share, that they would have, by the third campaign around, they'd be turning that into a habit. And I've seen a lot of clients go through that process where predictions are, okay, let's see how those turn out. Okay, they turned out as Marketing Evolution said that they would. Now let's take some action. And then they begin to get in the habit of building that type of trust. So I think that that's just human nature. So I think building buy-in is really about committing to real time over the course of the year. Finally, jumping to the next slide, 36, about training. training is an important area, and we, Marketing Evolution, obviously, if you're one of our existing clients on the line today and you want to get deeper into this, we have half-day and full-day training workshops that expand on these concepts and really look at your specific business and your business dynamic. If you're not a Marketing Evolution client but are a member of ANA, we are the official trainer for the ANA School of Marketing Impact Marketing Workshop, which is all about ROI and how to use and take advantage of this information. And you can also oftentimes take your ANA credits for these workshops and get a full day training on these materials. I'd say that beyond just doing training, it's important to onboard every new person in marketing into this real time. So what we're finding is that this is a paradigm shift within marketing, and so a lot of people coming into marketing, if they haven't been, you should expect that they are not familiar with how to think about real time and about nuances that we've talked about today between rear view mirror real time versus as it happens real time, and that you should have an onboard training module where you take them through and bring them up to speed so they can be productive members of the team in taking advantage of real-time insights. So I'm going to hit the last key point here on what's better than real-time course correction. If you advance to the next slide, and then we'll go to slide 38 here. And I think what's better than real-time is a question we always ask ourselves. Whenever we see the results of a marketing campaign less than what the marketer wanted, we asked, how early could we have known that there was going to be a problem here? And what could we have done differently to have averted the problem in the first place? Now, leading indicators are super helpful for that. But I think there's another one, which is some of the process around creative pre-testing, target audience, concept testing, and so forth. We found that those can even come well before that you ever get into field, all the way back to when you're writing your first marketing brief. So we've developed, if we jump to the next slide, 39 here, we've developed a piece of our software called the Best Practice Engine, and what it does is it looks at your marketing campaigns and the dates when they're running, and knows all the media that are in the plan. And to the right here, it has a list of all the people that have different areas of responsibility touching the plan, and it knows your timeline of how you get things done. And it uses that to say, okay, well, what are the right insights to get to the right people at the right time early in the process so that this campaign has the best chances of achieving the highest ROI possible. So if we jump down to slide 40, the major timeline ones are consumer insight research, marketing brief development, creative development, and so forth. Now, clearly at the green circle we've been talking about today, which is marketing execution, measuring things in campaign, but if we can get 3 or 4 months before the campaign even starts, and we can begin to apply some of the insights and knowledge, that's ideal. So one example here in the build is a best practice. If we see that TV is part of the plan, we may have learned about working on your brand, what really are some of the creative best practices that make it most effective in television. And we advance the slide to slide 41. Here's an example from Facebook. And what you can see here is that we call these are really knowledge objects. It says who is working on it, when, this is worked on 115 days before the campaign starts, and what triggers it. So if social media is in your plan, then we're going to push this best practice about how to use Facebook to the agency, designer, and creative responsible for the social media aspect, and they'll get that message 115 days before the start of the campaign. So, and if we jump to the next slide, this is some of the examples of the best practice output, which is oftentimes a list of what are the relevant best practices for you specifically, customized to you as a marketer, based upon both a combination of academic research that we've reviewed, over 300 of these what we call public best practices, and all the private proprietary best practices we've developed on your brand specific. Okay, so concluding thoughts and Q&A. Slide 43. When you hear somebody say real time, I encourage you to grill them. Ask them really whether, figure out whether they mean real time in the sense of a rear view mirror, or whether they mean real time truly in the sense of as it happens real time. The next thing I'd say is that by all means definitely use rear view mirror, but combine that with as it happens real time. When someone says empirical generalization, make sure that you're recognizing that it's just a fancy name for making it up based on the old data patterns, and that you probably also need to be looking at how this specific campaign is working. And you're often able to get the best insights and best practices out of measuring this campaign as opposed to the general pattern. Discuss success up front, scenario plan, and add flexibility into your media plan. Definitely reserve budget. And of course, track everything you can and prepare yourself for real-time meeting the one-to-one marketing world. So with that, I will, Clifford wants to share some questions.
Sure, Rex. As a marketer, we see a lot of value in using marketing mix models, but the data is slow to get. Is there a way to connect the MMM data with real-time analysis?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. Yes, and so that's exactly, we began doing that work about 4 years ago, maybe a little bit earlier than that, and now it's pretty well refined. So the ability to take, that question is brilliant, because that's exactly what our vision of what real-time is today. It's the combination of the rear view mirror with as it happens. And so send us an email. We'll follow up and take you specifically through how those get joined up together, because they can work very harmoniously together. Unfortunately, the state of the industry right now is that they're really marketers that are doing mixed modeling are only getting the rear view mirror picture. And not surprisingly, the marketers are pretty frustrated because they want to see insights about how their campaign's working right now. And there's where there's a language gap between, in the organization between what's meant by real time. And so I think when you join those together, the organization gets the best of both worlds.
Great. Another question we did have, we believe that creative plays a big role in determining whether or not a campaign is effective, and is often overlooked when analyzing media effectiveness. How do you optimize media when creative is a dud?
Yeah, so that observation is totally correct. And that one of the things that the rear view mirror models miss is how important creative really is, and how this specific creative in this campaign that's running right now, how that's working. So the first thing that we suggest is that you really want to begin to create, I think what the power of as it happens real time encourages in an organization is creating more than a couple creative executions. And when you're creating the couple executions, trying different strategies and different message points. So I mean, you should ground it into what truly motivates consumers. But one of the ways we were able to get insights for ESPN when we were doing work with them on X Games was that they were the classic picture where they had awareness, but people didn't necessarily want to watch. And when we looked at why, they had two different creatives work running at the same time. One of it showed X Games as a very irreverent sport, and these kind of punk skateboarders going through the airport racing against each other to get on the airplane. And the other spot showed really the X Games, the actual competition, and it was being covered like in Olympic sports and people kissing their gold medals and all this thing. And that second ad worked way better than the other one. And as we dug deeper into it, we unlocked the insight that it's because that motivation, the motivation for watching X Games isn't these punks fighting, to get there first. It was really about these world-class athletes competing on the biggest stage for their sports, and it being covered like how ESPN covers sports. And so if we had only a single ad message running at that time, we wouldn't have been able to juxtapose why one was working better than the other and dig underneath the diagnostics about how that one of the ads was getting people to want to watch and the other one wasn't, and to figure out which target audiences were responding to it and so forth. So wherever possible, increase your budget on the amount of creative production you're going to do. Increase your strategic thinking about how do we create A, B, C, D, E splits instead of just A-B splits, or worse, just a single message. And then keep that budget flexible so that as you see which ones work better in the first couple of days of the campaign, quickly adjust your creative rotation and potentially buy more media to support to the right target audience. I'm glad that question was asked, because I think that's one of the really big insights about how do marketers boost their productivity and ROI by a large percentage. That's a key secret to how marketers make that happen. I think we have time for one more question, maybe two more. I know we're at the hour, and so if you need to drop off, I won't be offended. You can fire off an email to us, and we'll certainly follow up personally if you have additional questions. But I think I'll take one more.
Sure, Rex. We have one more here. I hear our agency throw around the term real-time analysis often. What question should I be asking to understand if we're looking in a rear-view mirror or truly looking as it happens real-time analytics?
First is I'd almost be willing to guarantee they're talking about real-time in the rear-view mirror sense, because that's pretty much what agencies and measurement companies mean by it. Gosh, I think that the best question, we'll send you a litmus test, what we call a litmus test of questions, but some of it is to be able to ask, can you answer which message working best among women specifically? Can you answer which message is working best among women in San Diego specifically? Can you answer which message is best increasing and pick a key leading indicator like a net promoter score or brand awareness or brand favorability. Those three questions begin to really get to the heart of whether or not they're running it through an aggregate model or they're actually looking at individual customers right now as the campaign's unfolding and how exactly it's working. So that's the quick litmus test that really gets to that question. You can also educate them about what you mean by rear view mirror, which is you had a model built upon the past several years and you're plugging in some new inputs to see what's happening. Sometimes that is a productive way of discussing it. But the litmus test of if you can tell how a message is working specifically among very targeted individual segments, and or the difference between how this message is working versus this other message if you have an A/B split test. That usually smokes out whether or not somebody's actually doing it as it happens analysis. I will make one other comment there, which is my concern about a lot of the data feeds. I mentioned that there's 180 different data feeds that we could pull from Facebook, from a single Facebook marketers page alone, is that there's total data smog. The truth is that out of the 180, there's only a couple of those metrics that come out of it that are actually super valuable. And so I'm always wary of companies that throw up dashboards really quickly without actually integrating each data field that's in the dashboard with a model that actually predicts something valuable that is directly tied to the definition of success. So I'd also push on that, okay, we're tracking all these things, but why? How does that help me predict whatever is my fill in the blank for your definition of success, and really push them hard on that area. And that will make them better, and it will make you better for having that dialogue. Well, thank you guys so much for joining today's call. Sorry I didn't get to all the questions, and apologize about the technical difficulty, but if you'd like to follow up with us directly, especially if you're a client of Marketing Evolutions and you want to dig deeper into some of these areas and topics, feel free to reach out to me or anyone on the Marketing Evolution team. If you have other questions we didn't get to, feel free to drop us an email. And, I'll be spending the next couple of days responding to those personally, along with some of the help from my Marketing Evolution team. Thank you all very much.